So, Lori Vallow Daybell, the Doomsday Mom, was recently handed a sentence of 5 life imprisonments with no possibility of parole, with 3 of these sentences being run concurrently. Now, this case has traveled a period, and I think that justice has been served, but it's also very important that, in as much as the case seems to have come to an end, we go back and retrace the timelines to understand how everything started, right from the inception of the marriages that would later fall apart and the unions that would form between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, and the circumstances that came about as a result of this union going forward, and what happened before we ended up at where we are, to the point where Lori Vallow Daybell became known as the Doomsday Mom and ultimately was found guilty of taking the lives of her children and the ex-wife of her new husband, and also being sentenced to 5 life imprisonments without the possibility of parole, and 3 of them to run concurrently. So the whole thing begins from the 9th of March 1990, when Chad and Tammy Daybell got married in Manti, Utah, and lived in Springville, Utah, where they started the Spring Creek Book Company. Now, through this company, Chad published many religious and post-apocalyptic books. And in the next several years, Chad and Tammy would go on to have 5 children. Now, fast forward to 2006. Lori Ryan married Charles Vallow, and this was going to be Lori's 4th marriage, and their family lived in Arizona. Bear in mind, Lori Ryan would later become Lori Vallow Daybell as the years went by, but we'll get there. Now, this was Lori's 4th marriage, and in going into this marriage, Lori actually brought along her son by name Kobe and her daughter Tylee, which she had from 2 of the previous marriages. Kobe was just a few years older than Tylee. Now we move to 2008, where Lori's niece by name Melanie Pawlowski married Brandon Woodrow, and over the years they had 4 children together. Brandon was reportedly close with Lori's family and baptized Tylee into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In 2014, Charles and Lori adopted Joshua J.J. Vallow, who is the biological grandson of Charles's sister, Kay Woodcock, and her husband, Larry Woodcock. J.J. had autism, and Lori's attorney said his biological parents could not take care of him. Lori and Charles agreed to adopt him as a result. Take note of all these names. They would make sense when we get into the crimes and the cases that followed. Now, a condition of the adoption was that the Woodcocks remain in JJ's life. Within a month of the adoption, the Woodcocks moved to Arizona because they had a hard time being away from him. Now, sometime in 2014, the Vallows also moved to Kauai, Hawaii, and operated a small business on the island as indicated by business records. Now, the Woodcocks said they visited JJ less frequently but maintained contact through the phone and FaceTime. Eventually, the Vallows moved back to Arizona, and Kay said she recalled Tylee becoming a good sister self to JJ. So the family was building up, and you could tell that things were bonding between the 2 families and those that came from other marriages with Lori. Now in 2015, Chad and Tammy moved to Salem, Idaho, a city just outside of Rexburg, with their 5 kids, and Tammy worked as a school librarian. At some point before Lori and Chad met, Lori began reading books that Chad had printed these religious books I spoke about earlier, and these books were often focused on radical theories of spirituality surrounding the end of the world. Now, on the 3rd of April 2018, Tylee's father, Joseph Ryan, died, and it was ruled that he had a heart attack. On the fall of the same year, Lori and Melanie Pawlowski began attending meetings not sponsored by the church, but their spouses did not attend. Melanie Pawlowski reportedly told Brandon the firesides were her thing and was very clear he was not welcome to come with them. Now, Melanie Pawlowski also reportedly became focused on the idea that the world was going to end soon. Brandon actually indicated that Melanie Pawlowski was not very religious when they were first married, but then she began getting really passionate about going to church and certain ideas at church. Fast forward to October 26, 2018, Lori and Chad met at a religious conference in St. George. Lori's friend, Melanie Gibb, reported that they were flirty and talked about a lot of beliefs they shared. They allegedly used those beliefs to justify taking the lives of Tammy, JJ, and Tylee, a felony indictment would later indicate. Now, at this particular conference, Chad reportedly told Lori that they had been married in a previous life, and Lori said she believed it. So straight away, you could see the religious indoctrination playing out here. Some way, somehow, Chad actually was able to convince Lori that they were married in a previous life, so they are reincarnated spouses. And Lori also believed, because obviously Charles is writing these doomsday books, Lori is consuming the doomsday books, so they are a fertile ground of religious indoctrination for each other. So they hit it off right away. Now, Lori created a contact for Chad labeled Bishop Shamway. This was the first electronic evidence of the interaction between these two people, and this happened on the 28th of October 2018. On November of 2018, Chad reportedly came to Arizona for another conference, and according to Gabe, Chad stayed at Lori's house as Charles was out of town. Gabe said that she believed it was a hookup, and I think so too, because what are the odds? The timelines are just too convenient for these two. Now, that weekend, Lori told Gabe that she and Chad were sealed together by Moroni and Jesus Christ in the LDS temple, and that the relationship of multiple lives was reunited. Fast forward to the 5th of December 2018, Chad and Lori made their first appearance together on the Preparing a People podcast, Time to Warrior Up. That was the title. Now, the podcast has since been removed, and that episode also dissociated itself from the couple. So it was on air at the time, but when these issues started coming up, they have removed it from the podcast and they have dissociated themselves from this couple. And it's understandable how things have played out. On the 25th of December 2018, Brandon said that it was the last Christmas his family spent with Charles and Lori, and that he said everything felt different. Brandon said the relationships were not very close and other people were there, including Melanie Gibb and her family. Lori told Gabe that she had a dream Charles was in a car accident and would not be home by January 1st, 2019. However, Charles was never in an accident, and when Gabe asked Lori what happened, she said he didn't because Satan interfered with the plan. So straight away you could see that the religious indoctrinations were manifesting, and it looks like deadly ideas were coming into Lori's mind. This took us into 2019, and in January of 2019, Charles texted Brandon and told him that Lori was accusing him of infidelity. Lori would tell her friend Melanie Gabe that Charles was taken over by an evil spirit and they needed to perform castings to get it out of him. Now, throughout the next several months, Charles would allegedly be taken over by 3 to 4 different evil spirits that they would need to cast out. Lori later started referring to people who had spirits in them as zombies. Take note of this because at a point in time, she would actually refer to her kids, reportedly as zombies. On the 31st of January 2019, body camera footage from Arizona Police Department showed Charles begging Lori to receive mental health help at the community bridges. However, it was determined Lori had a normal state of mind and she was medically cleared by community bridges. So when this case first broke, honestly, going through the facts, I thought that Lori Vallow Daybell may have some sort of mental issue, but she was actually cleared to be sane. She was cleared to have a normal state of mind, free of any form of mental illness or mental challenges. So she knew what she was doing. I think this case was more about a heavy spiritual indoctrination than any other thing else. Now, Chad searched Ned Schneider Louisa obituary in 1997, and Ned was the name Chad and Lori gave to one of the demons that said was possessing Charles. So they had even given a name to a demon that they are saying has possessed the husband of Lori. Now, on February 2019, Charles filed for divorce from Lori, claiming she viewed herself as a god preparing for the second coming of Christ, according to court documents. Charles claimed his wife would kill him if he got in her way of her performing her mission, and he later halted the divorce proceedings and told Lori he wanted to make the marriage work. Lori and Chad were frequently in contact, even though they were both married at the time. Now, from February to March 2019, Charles contacted JJ's grandma, Kay, because Lori left and he didn't know where she went. Kay often took care of JJ, while Lori was missing because Charles needed to work. And Kay and JJ would eventually move back and forth between Arizona and Louisiana as a result. According to this grandma, she helped Charles with his business in February because he was distraught over his separation from Lori. And in February 2019, Charles approached her about having her named as beneficiary on his $1 million life insurance policy. Charles named Kay as the sole beneficiary and removed Lori from it. Charles and JJ eventually moved to Houston, Texas because it was closer to Kay's home in Louisiana. Now, according to Kay Woodcock, Lori left her husband and child for a total of 58 days during this period. It was later discovered that Lori was in Hawaii. She never reached out to JJ. She never reached out to Charles also. In March of 2019, a joint bank account between Lori and her brother Cox was used to purchase a round-trip flight for Chad from Idaho Falls to Mesa. On the 3rd of March 2019, Chad searched on the internet for June 26 star sign, which is Lori's birth date and are Cancer and Leo compatible. April 2019, Lori moved to Texas to live with Charles and JJ, and Charles halted the divorce proceedings and told his family he wanted to make it work between him and Lori. 5th of May 2019, Chad searched malachite and eBay malachite jewelry on the internet. 7th May 2019, Lori searched the internet for malachite. Later on, Lori and Chad's wedding bands appeared to be made of malachite. So you would see the searches were not random. It was towards a planned wedding in the future. 17th May 2019, JJ visited the Woodcocks in Louisiana for the weekend and they celebrated his birthday. This was the last time the Woodcocks saw JJ in person. 29th May 2019, Lori and Zulema Pastins had a conversation about Charles's alleged demons. On the 1st of June 2019, Chad searched Hiplos on the internet, which was the name Chad and Lori gave to a demon that was allegedly possessing Charles. At this point, I think that Chad was sort of manipulating Lori because he is the one who churns out all these books and publications and these stories, these theories, if I should call them that, these indoctrinations, and Lori has been consuming them so heavily. I think that she seemed to be mesmerized by the fact that she has developed a personal relationship with this man whom she sees in a certain light as being so over the top, if I should call it that way. So it was easy for him to be manipulating her against her husband, and it seems Chad wanted her for himself, but was using the spiritual indoctrination angle as a means to get to her. And in so doing, he was actually breaking up her family. Now, Lori and Charles moved to Chandler, Arizona, and Lori reportedly told Melanie Gibb that Tylee was dark sometime between February and June of 2019. Lori's niece, Melanie Pawlowski, and her husband, Brandon, decided to get a divorce. Now, Brandon claimed Melanie affiliated herself with similar beliefs as Lori and joined a cult. Melanie also allegedly told Brandon that she received revelation from God that she wasn't safe at the house with him and used this argument against him in court for establishing visitation rights. On the 1st of July 2019, Charles told Lori he was going to Idaho to talk to Tammy Daybell about Lori and Chad's affair after weeks of confronting Lori about it. Now on the 9th of July 2019, Chad searched the internet for when you surprise someone with accusations. And on the 11th of July, Lori's brother, Alex Koch, ended up shooting and killing Lori's estranged husband, Charles. At the time, Alex Cox claimed it was in self-defense, but it would later be established that this was actually a homicide. Cox was designated as Lori's protector by Chad in the patriarchal blessing. So you could see that, or at least I think that Chad is the mastermind of this whole spiritual indoctrination thing. And I don't understand why some people are so gullible that he can get to manipulate them to do things to the extent of taking someone's life just because you've been ordained as some sort of spiritual protector of another person. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't see why spirituality should make you lose track of your own common sense, which is supposed to be your compass for life. But it turns out that the indoctrination was so heavy. Chad was doing this and doing it so well and so deeply. Now, the crime scene was described as odd by a Rexburg police detective. Now, he said that Cox told officers he shot Charles twice in the chest while they were standing, but due to the bullet's location, the second shot was fired while Charles was already on the ground. Now, one of the detectives said he had never responded to a shooting death with so little blood and no blood spatter. Cox told the officers he gave Charles CPR after Cox shot him. However, several detectives said if that were true, there would be more blood, as well as injuries or impressions on Charles's chest. Charles's phone was not found at the scene or on his body. It was later turned over to the Chandler Police Department by Lori, and the GPS data on it confirmed that Lori went to Burger King and Walgreens and dropped JJ off at school that morning. Lori said this was after Charles had died. Surveillance from Burger King, however, showed Lori in the drive-thru at 7:54 a.m., while the initial 911 call for Charles was made at 8:36 a.m., more than 30 minutes after Lori left the house. So, when her husband had been shot by her brother, she found time to leave him, go to Burger King's, go to other places, spend over 30 minutes before the 911 call was made. Cox's other sister, Summer Shiflett, said he had a brain injury as a teenager after an accident, and he kind of kept making decisions in life as a 16-year-old. I don't know if this has been determined medically, but if what she's saying is anything to go by, then it means that Lori Vallow, aside being heavily indoctrinated with this doomsday spiritual teachings by Chad, also had a brother who was old but was actually going through life with the mind of a 16-year-old. This is a dangerous combination, and Chad seems to be manipulating it very effectively for his own purposes. Now, after Charles died, his kids from a previous marriage asked Lori what had happened, and she avoided answering the question. She just said his remains would be cremated. They repeatedly asked her what happened and how he died, but she left them and moved on. Now, according to Gabe, after Charles had died, Lori and Chad seemed very happy, obviously, because I think that they needed him out of the way, especially since he was not ready to just end the marriage. They needed to get him out of the way so that they can have become a doomsday couple, as they've already determined through their own twisted beliefs that they were a married couple in their previous life. So, prior to Charles's death, Lori and Chad communicated multiple times a day, and Lori had 2 to 3 cell phones, with one dedicated to her communications with Chad. They would also reportedly meet at hotels and were intimate while Charles and Tammy were both alive. And Lori told Gabe this was according to God's will because they had been married in multiple lives and had a mission together. I think that is damn outright bullshit and stupidity. Now, on the 12th of July 2019, Chad placed a call to Valley of the Sun Mortuary in Arizona following Charles's death. Chad asked about pricing for cremation and pricing to send the remains to family in Louisiana. It turns out that Charles's family was actually from Louisiana, so the question was begging, was Chad actually seeking to pay for Charles's cremation after he has been cheating on his dead wife, or his wife before she died, with Charles's wife before? It just doesn't make sense. You co-conspire to end someone's life whilst you were cheating on your wife with this person's wife, and you have the guts and the effrontery to want to pay for his cremation and pay for their cremated ashes to be delivered to the family of the man who you have just conspired to kill just so you take his wife. I think this guy had lost touch with his conscience and he was just on the loose, modeling himself as a holy person, a religious person, but all this while harboring really deep, dark intentions for people who have what he wants. And in this case, it was Charles, and his wife, Lori, was also aiding this man to kill her husband. I pity Charles so much, because if you get yourself in such an equation, you are going to be balanced out, and balanced out he was, because they ended up taking his life. Now, approximately $3,000 was sent to Valley of the Sun Mortuary. Chad sent Lori multiple texts in what investigators called a romance novel. Chad, who was still married to Tammy, told Lori she was his best friend on earth and throughout eternity, and that he would see her in a minute as he was going to bed. Chad also described in detail a romantic relationship between James and Elena, who are the names he used to substitute for himself and Lori. Chad texted Lori about his children's upcoming BYU Idaho graduations and commencement ceremonies. Chad said in the text, "I feel like she will be gone by then, but I will still have the hoop to deal with. So I believe that's why the Lord is making me wait." Chad also texted Lori, saying, "I need so badly to just gently kiss you. For hours, it would likely lead to other activities." Lori responded, "Likely or luckily? It would likely lead to nakedness." This is one of my romantic texts reported, or this is one of many romantic texts reported between the two. So I don't know. I just don't know. I'm so astonished as to the extent that is it even spiritual indoctrination at all, or this is just two twisted people who are cheating on their spouses and hiding behind religion to do it. The point is that they are so twisted, you can't even determine the root causes clearly, because just when you think you've put a finger on it, it turns in a different direction and you just can't understand them. But this is what they were up to. Now, on the 20th of July 2019, a purchase was made on Lori's credit card to pay for an Allegiant Airlines flight for Chad to go from Provo to Arizona. 22nd of July 2019, Chad and Lori texted each other about Kauai and the plan. The plan here in quotes. But the question is, what was the plan? Lori told Chad he would love the scenery in Kauai and it's very similar to Hawaii. And Chad then responded, "Hopefully we can be there soon." July 2019, Lori organized a casting for Brandon because he was dark and had an evil spirit. So Lori was organizing an exorcism. Now, Lori told her niece, Melanie, that Boudreaux was part of Hitler's group and considered a very high dark. Between August 10th to October 24th, 2019, according to the Roxburgh Police Department, Cox purchased 46 guns. And the 10th of August 2019, Kay Woodcock said the last conversation she had with JJ was on this day. According to her, he normally had an iPad or iPhone and he would walk around and talk to Larry and me. He wouldn't hold the device to him. He would walk around and see the ceiling in most of the places he lived. However, she said this incident was different in that JJ did not have a device in his hand. It seemed like someone was holding it for him. Kay also said, and it was very, very short a call from JJ, which was unusual compared to what he's been doing with them previously. Now, when she attempted to contact him over the next few months, she never got any response from Lori. Now, fast forward to the 14th of August 2019, Lori will then submit a rental application for a townhouse in Rexburg and listed her income as the amount of combined Social Security's benefits for herself, JJ, and Tylee. Tylee should have been receiving her own benefits at this time, and Lori was supposed to use JJ's benefits for him. So you could see that Lori was trying to play smart with the money here. And all these would later come back to haunt her because it seemed to be like an aspect of the motive for the crime of her husband getting murdered by her brother eventually. Now, on the 31st of August through to September 2019, Lori, Tylee, JJ, Alex, and Melanie Pawlowski all moved to Rexburg in Idaho. September 2019 was when Lori reportedly told Gabe that JJ was also possessed. So you would see that Lori was now at a stage in her spiritual indoctrination where she could see people who are possessed, allegedly. And I don't know how she's able to determine that on her own, But it turns out she was now able to do these things from her husband now through to this adopted boy, JJ. Tylee's monthly auto payment for her Jeep came back as insufficient funds, even though Tylee had never missed a payment before this. Now, on the 3rd of September 2019, Lori enrolled JJ at Kennedy Elementary School in Rexburg. On the 8th of September 2019, Chad signed an application with Tammy to increase her life insurance to the maximum amount allowed on the policy. Tylee, JJ, Lori, and Alex visited Yellowstone National Park at this time, and officials say this was the last time anyone saw Tylee alive and the last in-person purchase from Tylee's bank account. The FBI would later ask for help from anyone who may have photos of the family taken that day in the park. I have these photos, but because of the children involved and the children in the photos, I will not show them on my channel. Now, fast forward to the 9th of September 2019. Phone records later placed Cox on Chad's property in the general area where investigators found Tylee's remains. Chad also texted Tammy and told her he shot a raccoon and buried it in their pet cemetery. He said he found the raccoon when he was burning the limb debris by the fire pit. Now, between the 10th and the 16th of September 2019, Lori reportedly deposited money into Tylee's account, but it was immediately Venmoed to Colby Ryan, Lori's son. Now, authorities said there were 29 deposits into Tylee's account from Lori's account, where the money was immediately turned around and sent to Ryan. In the middle of September of the same year, Cox's girlfriend at the time, Zulema, said she visited Lori but never saw Tylee. She asked Lori where Tylee was, and Lori allegedly responded saying she had to be freed. Now, at this point, Zulema allegedly asked what she meant by that, and Lori lifted her hand to Zulema's face and said, "Don't ask." So the mystery was just growing. People around them were seeing that something was off, especially with Lori and the disappearance of her child. I mean, what did she mean by she had to be freed? I understand why Zulema will ask that question. Now, on the 18th of September 2019, the first payment for JJ and Lori's Social Security benefits was deposited. Both payments were $1,951 each. A woman met Lori to interview as a babysitter for JJ. Lori reportedly told the woman that JJ's dad had had a heart attack and died. Lori also said she had a teenage daughter at school in Rexburg, but that her daughter did not like babysitting without pay, so Lori needed to hire a babysitter, and that's how come this babysitter or prospective babysitter was there to be interviewed by her. Now, on the 19th of September 2019, this babysitter said she went back to Lori's house after her classes and watched JJ while Lori went to the airport to pick up a friend. She said that day she saw Lori, Cox, and a friend of Lori's, and when she left, Lori reportedly paid her in cash. This babysitter said she attempted to reach out to Lori about babysitting, but Lori informed her that JJ had gone to his grandparents and would be gone for a month. This babysitter then said she tried texting her after that, but Lori never responded. On the 20th of September 2019, Lori moved the final $10.04 from Tylee's personal bank account into her own account. And this was the last day that JJ attended Kennedy Elementary School. Lori searched the internet for Kennedy Elementary, Rexburg, Idaho phone number. And on the 22nd of September 2019, Gabe and her boyfriend, David Warwick, visited Lori in Idaho. And at this point, Lori told Gabe that Tylee was a BYU, Idaho, with her roommates, and that it was later revealed that Tylee was never enrolled at BYU, Idaho, or any school in Idaho for that matter. So then the question was, where was she? And when Gabe asked Lori where Tylee's belongings were, Lori said they were put in storage. Now, during this weekend, Gabe and Warwick said they interacted with Chad several times. Chad and Lori were reportedly romantic, and Chad also allegedly told Warwick that Tammy was a good wife, but her time was coming up. And he went on to indicate that he had a dream that Tammy was going to die by the time she was 50. You see the trend forming. Similarly, going back, Lori had said she had a dream that her husband was going to die in an accident. Now here is Chad also saying a similar thing about his wife. Mind you, Lori's husband didn't die in an accident, but he ended up getting shot and killed by Lori's own brother. So if Tammy, the wife of Chad, is now allegedly going to die before the age of 50 as per Chad's dream, then you can see what is coming if this trend is what we are thinking it was. Now, Lori told Gabe that JJ had an evil spirit in him, which she had reportedly learned from Chad. Lori said JJ's behavior was more difficult and he would say things like, "I love Satan." And she did not notice any changes in JJ. Now, Lori told Gabe she was going to ask Kate to take care of JJ going forward. My question is, you actually adopted this boy. If you don't want to be with him anymore, or you think that you are fed up with him, I think there is a way to return him to where you took him from. Now, at 10:30 p.m. on this same day, Gabe said she saw Cox taking JJ upstairs but did not see him after that. The last proof of life for JJ is based on a photo of JJ sitting on a couch in front of Lori's front room. I have this picture too, but I will not show it because it's a kid and his life has actually been lost. Now fast forward to the 23rd of September 2019, and the Rexburg Police Department indicated that based on their investigations, this is likely the day that JJ was killed. So this was what they learned afterwards. Now Gabe stayed in Tylee's room and Warwick stayed in JJ's room during their visit. According to Gabe, Warwick woke up sometime after midnight, very troubled. And Warwick said he had the worst nightmare of his life that night. Gabe went to Lori's room and attempted to go in, but the door was locked and neither Lori nor Chad responded to her texts. That morning, Lori allegedly told Warwick that JJ had an episode climbing on the cabinets and fridge and knocking over a picture of Jesus Christ. Warwick asked if he could give JJ a blessing, but Lori told him that Cox already came to take care of him. Gabe and Warwick left for home, and from this point, Lori never told Gabe where JJ was. On the 24th of September, same year, Lori emailed Kennedy Elementary that JJ was being removed from Kennedy and was going to move to Louisiana to be with his parents. This, to me, was her trying to divert attention from the fact that JJ wouldn't be coming to school there again, and maybe some questions may come from the school towards her. The principal reportedly called Lori and informed her that once JJ was enrolled in Louisiana, his records could be sent there. And at this point, Lori then said they weren't moving him to Louisiana, but were actually going to be homeschooling him. So you see the sort of diversionary tactics that Lori was playing. Now, on the 30th of September 2019, Lori then searched the internet for how to get the back seat out of my Jeep Wrangler. Tylee drove a Jeep Wrangler before she was allegedly murdered. So, connecting the dots, it looks like Lori was now using Tylee's vehicle. And on the 1st of October 2019, Lori went on to rent a 10 by 10 storage unit from Self Storage Plus in Rexburg. Surveillance video obtained by East Idaho News showed Lori and a man visit the unit 9 times in October and once in November. The man, who appeared to be Cox, often visited alone, though he was once seen with a man who appeared to be Chad. On another visit, Chad and Lori reportedly visited the storage facility together. So it looks like the gang was set, and Chad was the leader, manipulating Lori and her brother and other accomplices. On the 2nd of October 2019, Brandon, Melanie's ex-husband, was returning to his home in Arizona one day when he was shot at by someone. Now, the person was holding a gun with a silencer and shot at him in his car. And at that point, Brandon said that only approximately 5 people knew where he lived. And it was a newer home, and Melanie was one of them. Arizona Central reported the shooter was driving a Jeep registered to Charles Vallow, who was actually dead. So this person who shot at him was driving the vehicle registered to Lori's dead husband. A detective with the Rexburg Police Department contacted Gilbert Police about the incident, and they asked RPD to conduct surveillance on Lori Daybell's apartment. They observed Chad and Lori, but never saw a teenage girl or a young boy. Lori then purchased a wedding ring on Amazon, which would later be seen on her finger at her marriage to Chad in Hawaii. On the 9th of October 2019, Tammy called 911 and said a man wearing a mask shot at her in her driveway with what she believed was a paintball gun, and it was later indicated by court documents that Cox attempted to shoot and kill Tammy that day. So, in this gang of deers, fueled by this spiritual indoctrination from Chad, it seems Cox is the executioner. And on the 10th of October, Ryan received a payment from Tylee's Venmo with the message, "We love you." Now, the RPD reported that the transaction was made using Tylee's phone, and according to authorities, the IP address for the transaction was registered to an address in Kansas City, Missouri, where Lori and her niece, Melanie Pawlowski, were. Now, on the 19th of October, Chad called 911 and said Tammy died in her sleep. Detectives visited the Salem home and determined that she died between 12:30 a.m. to 2 a.m. Chad then called 911 around 6 a.m. to report that he found his wife deceased. He told them Tammy had been experiencing health problems previous to this. And when detectives arrived at the home, they noted pink foam at her mouth. Chief medical examiner at the time said it was a manifestation of pulmonary edema. And at the time, they believed this was due to a heart attack and said her cause of death was natural. So officials did not perform an autopsy as they concluded that nothing seemed suspicious and said they believed Chad's story about her death. When Gabe asked Lori about Tammy's death, Lori said she had a dark entity in her and we had to do what we could to get that spirit out of her. Lori also told Gabe that Tammy was getting suspicious that Chad was having an affair. Now, Gabe said that was also when Tammy allegedly turned dark. So it looked like anytime you have a problem with Lori or Chad, you seemingly turn dark and you seem possessed, and then they will send Cox after you. Now, Chad reportedly told several people months before Tammy's death that she would die before her 50th birthday. And when Tammy passed away, Gabe said Lori was very happy to get married to Chad and never expressed any form of sadness or sorrow. The same as after Charles had also died. Obviously, because these two people were hindrances to what she and Chad were planning. And between October 22nd and 23rd, 2019, Tammy was buried at the Evergreen Cemetery in Springville, Utah. The family held a memorial service in Rexburg the next day. Now, Lori searched the internet for wedding dresses in Kauai, and told Zulema that Chad was going to move into her apartment. When Zulema told Lori that seemed fast and that shouldn't be there, or there should be time for grieving, Lori did not even bother to respond and she just moved on with her life. So clearly you could see the empathy was not there. Now on October 26, 2019, Chad visited a couple in his LDS ward called the Gilberts. He told them he met the woman he was going to marry and said she was very beautiful. A few days later, Chad brought Lori over to meet them. Alice Gilbert would go on to say that Chad was very affectionate with Lori. She goes on to say it was abnormal for us to see Chad that way. His arm was around her, he had her arm over her legs. She was giggling and laughing. For my husband and I, we were embarrassed just because we hadn't seen Chad that way. They looked like teenagers. Lori told Gilbert that her husband died of a heart attack. Chad told Gilbert that Lori had recently lost a daughter. I had the impression that Lori had no other children, but she was an empty nester. I thought the daughter who had died was like an older daughter who died of cancer or illness or something. So this was the impression that these Gilberts had. Now, on the 4th of November 2019, Tylee's Jeep was seized by the Rexburg Police Department and was never reported missing. 5th November 2019, Chad and Lori got married in Hawaii before returning to live in Rexburg. Now, police said Chad told witnesses that Lori had no children under 18, and Lori told people Tylee died years earlier. Now, on the 7th of November 2019, Zulema and Alex Cox got engaged during a trip to Rexburg. JJ and Tylee were not in Rexburg during this trip, and Zulema said she originally didn't know why or where they were, but got photos from them in Hawaii. During a layover in Phoenix on Lori and Chad's way back to Idaho, Lori told Zulema that JJ was with Kay. So you could see that Lori was trying so hard with her lies to hide the fact that her children were no more. Chad and Lori visited the Gilberts after they got married. Now, Gilbert said she knew Lori's kids were missing at this point, and she confronted Chad about the fact that he said Lori's daughter had died, and he denied that he ever said that. Gilbert asked Chad, "Didn't Tylee deserve a life, a car, a boyfriend?" Chad then reportedly responded, "She didn't like people, and she didn't like me." Now, personally, I have seen some people try to use religion to achieve their own selfish desires by weaponizing religion against others, especially when they are in a position where what they say as a subject of a religious stance is believed by a lot of people. They begin to weaponize the content of their religious teachings. I think Chad is one of such people. Now, on the 18th of November 2019, at approximately 4:30 a.m., Kay Woodcock said she got a feeling that she should check her computer. And when she did, she saw Charles's Gmail account, and since he gave her the password before he died, she logged in. Kay said she noticed a confirmation email of an Amazon order sent to an address in Rexburg. She contacted a private investigator and searched the browsing history of the Amazon account and saw searches for a beach wedding dress, a bathing suit, a men's large white linen top and pants, and malachite wedding rings. The order was placed on October 2nd of that year. Cox, on the 24th of November 2019, was given a patriarchal blessing by Chad, given by the power of the Church of the Firstborn. In the blessing, Chad said Cox is to be a missionary and is going to open the portals of time. Chad said in previous creations, Cox was a valiant warrior fighting for truth and righteousness, always seeking to do what was right. Now, Chad said again that Cox was chosen and was right by his sister always. Like I told you, in my mind, I see that they had brainwashed this man who has a 16-year-old's brain to thinking that he's some form of enforcer for the gospel. And on the 26th of November 2019, the Rexburg Police Department conducted a welfare check on JJ after the Woodcocks requested it, stating they had not spoken to him in several months. And I think this was one of the things that broke the case. And when they arrived, JJ was not at home. They observed Chad Daybell and Alex Cox unloading a pickup. Detectives asked Cox if Lori was home, and he said no. The detective said he was there to do a welfare check and that Cox began to look scared and turned to Chad. Chad did not say anything, and the detective then went on to ask Cox where JJ was. Then he said that he was in Louisiana, which the detective determined that that can't be possible. From this point, the detective asked for Lori's phone number, at which point Cox said he did not have it. Now, how can you not have your own sister's number? He and another detective then knocked on Lori's door, but nobody answered. According to this detective, he saw Chad leaving in his car, and then he stopped him. And upon stopping him, he asked Chad when the last time was that he saw JJ. Chad apparently said he last saw JJ in October in apartment 107 with Lori Vallow. This detective asked how Chad knew Lori, and to this, Chad responded that he hardly knew her and that they had only met a couple of times. So you see the lie right there. And for a so-called religious leader who is taking people to Jesus and all, this guy is very good at lying. That alone in itself exposes him. Now, after several requests for Lori's phone number from Chad, he was finally able to obtain it. And so I think that this detective was very persistent. Others may have just left it and moved on to other things they may consider serious or more serious at the time. Chad said he didn't originally provide it because he thought the detective was accusing him of something. And when the detective finally called in an additional detective and went to get the warrant, the chase was now on. The police did not get a warrant because Lori finally returned their call and agreed to open the door to the two detectives. Lori then allegedly told them JJ was with her friend Melanie Gibb in Arizona watching Frozen 2. Look at how elaborate the lie is. And Gibb said she originally did not answer the police because she didn't know what to do. But then she later told officers that JJ was never with her and that Lori told her to lie about his whereabouts and take photos of random children at the movie theater to show them. Wow. And these are some of the reasons why I get happy with how extensive the police are. If it turns out there was nothing wrong, somebody might think they are being a bother or a problem, or they are just worrying people. But I respect that because they have to go to that extent, because for all you know, something may have actually happened, and their persistence and in-depth digging is what will uncover it. Now, on the 27th of November 2019, the Rexburg Police Department then served a search warrant. But when they arrived, Chad and Lori were gone. They searched the apartment and found that almost everything had been taken, and it was nearly empty. So I think they were fleeing now because they realized they had the attention of the police. In her garage, there was a ghillie, also called a camouflage, and it was a suit with lots of ammunition, a rifle, a handgun, rope, and duct tape, and several silencers. They also discovered emails from Chad Daybell and books written by Chad. They also searched Cox's apartment and Melanie's apartment and found hazmat-looking white suits and a rental agreement for a storage unit in Rexburg. Now, from this point, the RPD officers tried to get a hold of Lori and Chad, but their phones were switched off. So, like I said, They knew the police was now on their trail and they were trying to find a way to outsmart them. Now, on the 29th of November of the same year, Alex Cox and Zulema Pastinas got married in Las Vegas. And on the 1st of December 2019, Chad and Lori flew to Lihu, Hawaii, and the children were still not with them. So now it was clear, looking at their trail, it was clear that they were moving together without the children. The children were unaccounted for. The 6th of December 2019, Gabe contacted the Rexburg Police Department and told them Chad and Lori called her on November 26th and asked her to lie about JJ's location. So, on the 11th of December of the same year, Tammy Daybell's death became suspicious now because the Fremont County Sheriff Office had determined, and aside, they wondered how these things were happening and an autopsy was not done. So it became important and they decided that, okay, just to be on the safer side, her body should be exhumed and an autopsy should be performed, just so they are sure that death can actually be conclusively ruled out as a natural cause death. According to a Utah medical examiner, Tammy Daybell had died at the hands of another and the death was through asphyxiation. So this was determined after the autopsy was conducted. Now they also said that there were bruises on Tammy's arms that happened in the hours around the time of her death, and that these bruises were consistent with someone being restrained and would be consistent with asphyxia being caused as death as well. Cox was on the phone with Chad and Lori when they told Cox that Tammy's body was being exhumed. Zulema said she was confused as she died of natural causes. He then told Zulema where to find money if he died. Cox also allegedly told Zulema that, I quote, "I think I'm being their fall guy." And when questioned about it, Cox wouldn't say much. So for somebody who allegedly had the mind of a 16-year-old, he was now beginning to wise up and realize that he was actually going to be their fall guy. Like I said, they were using him as an executioner. And in that case, if things go wrong, it will be traced to him. And he wouldn't have anything to absolve himself. On the 12th of December of the same year, Cox surprisingly passed away, reportedly again from natural causes. So this is somebody who had told his wife just on the 11th of December that if I die, this is where some money is. And he goes on to tell his wife, whom he has just married, that he thinks he's going to be the fall guy of some people. And then he's found dead the next day, and reportedly it's from natural causes. So all of a sudden, deaths were happening around Lori and Chad, and these were strange because they were all people from the close family. So definitely there was a big question on this couple, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. So we move on to December 20th, 2019. And at this point, the Rexburg Police Department announced that JJ and Tylee are missing. They said their disappearance was possibly linked to the suspicious death of Tammy. On the 21st of December 2019, the Rexburg Police Department stated that Chad and Lori were persons of interest. And on the 30th of the same month, Melanie Gibb told officers of a conversation she had with Lori after the kids were reported missing. When Gibbs had asked Lori where JJ was, Lori had told her that, "I know exactly where he is," and later a statement was released by the Rexburg police stating they have information indicating Lori either knows the location of the children or knows what's happened to them. And they indicated that the parents' lack of cooperation was outstanding. Exactly. Because for parents who are having their kids missing, we expect to see some more of, dedication to the whole search. But these guys seemed so unconcerned, especially Lori, who is the mother of these kids and the adopted mother of JJ. This took us into 2020, and on the 3rd of January, a search warrant was served on Chad's home in Salem, Idaho. Fremont County Sheriff said investigators reviewed 43 items, including cell phones, journals, computers, and medications. They were sent to an FBI lab for further analysis, and on the 7th of January, the Woodcocks traveled to Rexburg from Louisiana and announced a $20,000 reward for information leading to the recovery of the kids. On the 10th of January, Matt Daybell, Chad's brother, pleaded for him to cooperate with the investigation. He said his immediate family had little association with Chad due to concerns relating to his religious claims and books. December 25th, the Kauai Police Department served Lori with a notice stating she must produce JJ and Tylee to the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare or the Rexburg Police Department within 5 days. The next day, 26th, Nate Eaton with the East Idaho News confronted Chad and Lori in Hawaii. When asked where their children were and what happened to them, they refused to answer. And on the 30th of January, Lori missed the 5 p.m. deadline to produce JJ and Tylee, and Kay Woodcock held a news conference expressing her disappointment. 20th of February, police in Kauai subsequently arrested Lori on a $5 million warrant from Madison County. She was charged with 2 felony counts of desertion and non-support of dependent children. She was also charged with resisting officers, criminal solicitation, and contempt of court. So now things were heating up for Lori Vallow, and eventually the heat will catch up with Chad. On the 26th of February 2020, Lori waived her extradition to Idaho after 6 days in jail in Hawaii. This meant that Lori wanted to go back to Idaho, where she would be charged. And this came after multiple failed attempts to reduce the bail. So on March 5th, Lori was extradited from Hawaii to Rexburg. The next day, the 6th of March, Lori made her first court appearance in Rexburg, and the judge reduced her bail to $1 million, but she was still unable to post bond and continued to remain in jail. On the 9th of April, Idaho Attorney General's office told East Idaho News that Chad and Lori were under investigation for conspiracy, attempted murder, and or possibly murder. On the 8th of May 2020, Alex Cox's autopsy results were released. It said he died of natural causes, blood clots in his lungs. And on the 9th of June, at 7 a.m., a search warrant was served at Chad's home by the Rexburg Police Department, FBI, and Fremont County Sheriff's Office. Within hours, the remains of JJ and Tylee were discovered buried on the property. So sad. Tylee's remains were found at the pet cemetery near the fire pit, and JJ's remains were found near the pond on Chad's property. Chad called Lori and told her officers were searching the property, and Lori asked if they seized anything, to which Chad replied, "No, they are searching." They soon ended, and after the call, Chad told Lori to call her attorney at the time, who was Mark Means. Now, between 9:50 a.m. and 10 a.m. on the same day, Chad transferred $24,000 from his Mountain America Bank account to 3 of his kids in $8,000 deposits. Approximately $44,000 was left in the account. At 11:30 a.m., officers were told Chad was leaving his daughter's house across the street at a high rate of speed, despite being told he needed to remain or leave accompanied due to safety concerns. Chad was then taken into custody and booked into Fremont County Jail on charges of concealment, distribution, or alteration of evidence. On the 10th of June, Chad made his first court appearance via video from the jail. His bail was set also at $1 million. Now, on 29 June, prosecutors filed charges against Lori, including 2 counts of conspiracy to commit destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence. 2nd July 2020, prosecutors dismissed charges of desertion and non-support of children against Lori. And on the 15th of July, Lori pleaded not guilty to misdemeanor resisting or obstruction officers, criminal solicitation to commit a crime, and the contempt of court. 21st August 2020 was when Chad appeared for his district court arraignment before District Judge Stephen Boyce and pleaded not guilty to his charges. On the 27th of August 2020, Chad's attorney, John Pryor, asked Boyce to dismiss the case against Chad, and this request was actually denied. And then on the 1st of September that same year, Madison County prosecuting attorney Rob Wood filed a motion to combine the cases of Chad and Lori. It was decided in March 2023 later that they would have separate cases as Lori did not waive her right to a speedy trial. And I agree to this. I think it is good they have separate trials so that we can deal with each of them separately. Now, the 10th of September 2020, Lori appeared for her district court arraignment and pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of conspiracy to commit destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence. This took us into 2021, specifically the 24th of May, where a grand jury indicted Chad and Lori on several new felony charges, including first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. On the 8th of June 2021, Lori was committed to the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, where a psychologist deemed her not fit for trial. On the 9th of June, Chad pleaded not guilty to all charges in the indictment, and his children attended this meeting. On the 24th of the same month, a grand jury in Arizona indicted Lori for conspiracy to commit murder in the death of her 4th husband, Charles Vallow. The Arizona proceedings are on hold while she faces her charges in Idaho. On 29th of July of the same year, prosecutors dropped the destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence charges against Chad and Lori. And on the 5th of August 2021, prosecutors said they will seek the death penalty against Chad, stating the nature and magnitude of these crimes warranted the possibility of the highest possible punishment. I can't disagree with them on that. So on the 5th of October 2021, the Daybell trial was moved from Fremont County to Ada County. 28th December 2021, Judge Boyce ordered that McMeans, Lori's attorney, can no longer represent her. He cited a conflict of interest in representing both Daybells as well as concerns about his legal competency. This then took us to the 21st of March 2022, where John Pryor, Chad's attorney, requested to sever Chad's case from Lori's, but it was denied. However, it was later separated due to Lori not waiving her right to a speedy trial. And then on the 11th of April 2022, Boyce issued a written order that Lori was now competent for trial, and so they then proceeded. Lori was ordered to be released from the health and welfare facility, and her arraignment was set for April 19th. On April 19th, Lori attended her first arraignment, but she did not speak, and her attorney, Jim Archibald, pleaded not guilty on her behalf. On the 2nd of May 2022, prosecutors announced they would pursue the death penalty against Lori, and it was later ruled off the table by Boyce. On the 26th of May, Boyce announced the trials would be held together in January 2023. This was later decided against due to new evidence, and Lori did not waive her right to a speedy trial. So on the 1st of August 2022, Lori appeared in court and photos were taken of her smiling and wearing a band on her ring finger. A few weeks later, Lori's attorneys filed a motion asking that cameras be banned from the courtroom. Boyce granted the motion and cameras were banned from future court hearings and the trial. So, on the 6th of October 2022, Lori's case was put on hold due to competency issues. A month after that, Lori was found competent for trial, but it was postponed to the 3rd of April 2023. This then took us into the year 2023, specifically on the 2nd of March, where District Judge Stephen Boyce ruled that Lori and Chad's cases would be separated after new evidence was submitted. Lori would appear at trial on 3rd of April. Boyce grants a motion to take the death penalty off the table. The judge said the main reason was due to a large amount of evidence that her team does not have time to go through before trial. So, between the 3rd to 7th of April 2023, jury selection for Lori Vallow's murder trial began. Her jury was finalized, and to read about the jury selection and the questions, I think that you can go on the internet, there's more about it, but I just think that whatever jury was selected, the outcome was going to be the same, actually. On the 10th of April, opening arguments in Lori's murder trial were given. Prosecutors indicated that Lori Vallow Daybell used money, power, and sex to get what she wanted, whereas Lori's attorneys painted a picture of her as a caring mother with strong religious beliefs. On the 11th of April, a Rexburg police detective took the stand. At this point, jurors were shown graphic photos of the dead children, to the point that Vallow's attorney requested she leaves for her own mental health. Boyce rejected the request, saying her presence in the courtroom was needed to ensure a fair trial for all involved, and I agree with the judge. Now, on the 12th of April, which was the day 8 of Lori Vallow's murder trial, it ended abruptly due to a death in the prosecution's family. Before it ended, the Rexburg police detective was cross-examined by John Thomas, and a phone call between Lori and Chad was played for the jurors. On the 13th of April, which marked day 9 of Lori Vallow's murder trial, Lori's best friend, Melanie Gibb, took the stand. Now, she talked of possession and castings, and the first time Lori met Chad. A detective played the court to a patriarchal blessing given to Alex Cox by Chad and a phone call Chad made to a mortuary right after Charles's death. They also talked about Charles's confrontation of Lori about her affair. And on the 14th of April, which marked day 10 of Lori Vallow's murder trial, Lori found out Charles's death that she was not his beneficiary, and testimony from Cox's wife, that's Lori's sister-in-law, and Charles's possession, that demonic possession, were all discussed on this 10th day of the trial. On the 18th of April, which marked day 11 of the trial continued, and after a brief break for events for the death in the prosecution's family. On day 11, Lori's sister-in-law testified that Cox wouldn't make decisions without Lori and Chad, and a heartbreaking conversation between Lori and her son, Kobe Ryan, is played for the court. Several witnesses reviewed Lori's use of money, including suspicious activity. On the 19th of April, officials continued their review of Lori, Chad, and Cox's money usage, as well as more information on the social security benefits of Tylee and JJ. The court also interviewed several detectives involved in reviewing Charles's death, including some testimony on discrepancies in information given to them by Charles's death. Now, on the 20th of April, the court reviewed the day Charles died, how Lori allegedly stopped responding to JJ's babysitter, and that Tylee and JJ were not in school, as well as jarring new details of the weekend JJ allegedly lost his life. On April 24th, an audio was released of the first time Lori lied to officers about JJ's location during a wellness check. The next day, April 25th, Lori's sister, Summer Shiflett, testified and a phone call was played between Lori and Shiflett after JJ and Tylee's remains were discovered. On the call, you could hear Shiflett saying, "You threw them away like garbage." The next day, JJ and Tylee's cause of death was revealed by a forensic pathologist. It was revealed that Lori's DNA and Cox's prints were found at the crime scene. On the 28th of April, the court discussed the pink foam found in Tammy's mouth when she died. More discussion on Tammy's cause of death, all included in the timeline from the 1st of May. And on the 2nd of May, a podcast that Lori is a guest in is also discussed. The podcast reportedly shows that Tammy was a good mother, and it discussed her taking care of the children and taking them away from an abusive father. On the 3rd of May, the court discussed the day that someone tried to shoot Tammy, including the search history of Cox. He reportedly searched several AR-15 related searches leading up to it. And on the 4th of May, it would have been Tammy's 53rd birthday if she was still alive. So on the 5th of May, the court reviewed several text messages between Chad and Lori, as well as Lori and others relating to the case. On the 6th, more romantic text messages were reviewed. On the 8th, additional text messages from Lori, Alex, and Chad were also revealed, including text messages about eliminating zombies and the romantic text between Lori and Chad. Now, the prosecution on May 9th announced that they have concluded their arguments and the defense followed suit. Concluding arguments were to start on the 11th of May. On the 12th of May, a 12-member jury unanimously found Lori Vallow Daybell guilty on all charges. And the key word is unanimously. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. Lori was found guilty of murder and conspiracy to commit murder for her children. She was also found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Tammy Daybell. Additionally, Daybell was found guilty of grand theft. Now, this brought us to what happened just some few hours ago, the 31st of July 2023. Lori Vallow Daybell, the Doomsday Mom, was sentenced to 5 life sentences in prison, with only 3 of which to run consecutively. Judge Stephen Boyce denied her any chance of parole, and victims spoke at the sentencing, all expressing their joy for the justice that has been served. But you may ask, what about Chad Daybell, the seeming mastermind of it all? Yes, his day in court will come. Chad Daybell's trial is expected to take place in April of 2024, and I'm looking forward to that court case as well, because I think that he is the mastermind, and I trust the investigators are going to dig deep and prepare for him. What do you think about this case? I think it's a bizarre case. It is a testament and an evidence to how religion or religious indoctrinations can be twisted for people's own greedy, selfish, and personal interests at the expense of the well-being of others, and sometimes even at the expense of the lives of others, as seen in the case of Tammy, JJ, and Tylee. I'm happy with the sentencing. I'm so happy about it. If you haven't seen the video of what the judge said during the sentencing, you can check my playlist, is there. And then you can also check my playlist for the bizarre statement that Lori Vallow gave before her sentence was passed by the judge. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet done so. hit the notification button. I hope you enjoyed this detailed summary of the Lori Vallow Daybell case. We'll catch you next time.